it it's almost like or equivalent to compassion through this connectedness.
Yes. And so let me just say something about that. I'll tell you this quotation that the students picked up. So we read one of our classes. We read the work of Levinas because I've been working on him, and we read this radically, I don't know what you call it, utopian kind of vision of what human responsibility is. And this rubs totally against what both the inside and the outside students, what they've heard in their environments. You know, in the prison, it's you stick with your own. They're reading people like Ayn Rand. You know Ayn Rand. It's this radical autonomy of the self. You know, you pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. You know, it doesn't have to do with the other at all. And even the university students, although many of them are very idealistic, the actual theories that lie behind so many of the stuff, if they're economics majors, really what is being taught is that the highest thing in life is to satisfy your desire for economic prosperity, and then to want the other person, after you've satisfied yourself, that other person to flourish. And really, it's about maximizing self-interest in the world, whatever. In some ways, they're coming from the same sort of place that has to do with an isolated self. So we read the Brothers Karamazov of Dostoevsky, and we read Levinas's thought. And so we put together an anthology of student writings at the end of each class. And the one that they picked was a quotation mark, and this is one that actually was very influential on Levinas. He was very fond of a particular quotation that is actually articulated by many characters in the novel. Something like, "We are all responsible, but I am more responsible than anyone else," something like that. And there is a Greek Orthodox father, Zosima, who's a very influential character in the novel. And Dostoevsky himself actually started out his life as a very secular radical, and then went to prison for 5 years. He was accused of political radicalism, and he went to prison, and the prison just hated him, you know, because he was a very snotty, university-educated person, and it took him a long time to actually be able to encounter another on an equal basis. But at any rate, this quotation was this Greek Orthodox father said, you really can't judge others. You're really not in capacity to judge other people. What you have to realize, first of all, is that when you see a prisoner, a criminal standing in front of you, that you are actually, as crazy as this sounds, more responsible for what that criminal has done than the criminal himself. What that person has done is your responsibility in some way.
Right.
And I don't think I put it very well. You have to. It was quote something like that.
It's very similar to the idea that we think about compassion, and we see that when there is suffering on one hand, the other hand then say that that's not a part of me. So this other hand really isn't the other, but that merely would respond. The left hand would respond and help. So that's another metaphorical for maybe what you're describing too.
Yeah. So I think the students who come from the outside into the institution, they start understanding the statistics that in Oregon prisons, almost 80% of the incarcerated population suffer from, when they come in, drug and alcohol addiction. And then, then you just sort of go down the line, economic advantages. And then you realize, wait a second, we're all members of the same culture. What responsibility do I have? And then we go into the execution chamber. I take them on a prison tour. That's extremely difficult experience, But it's the same. They go in there, and I don't think they probably ever really thought about the death penalty, but it's the law in the United States. When it's the law and in a democratic country, and you come of age, that's your responsibility if that's the law. And they come in there and they see it, and they see this whole thing, and and suddenly, wait a second, that's the law. We need to think about that. So again, I think it's an expanding of what you consider your responsibility, your capacity to respond to a situation, rather than, well, that's a prison. These people did bad things. How are you enmeshed in what goes on inside a prison? And then when you have these conversations and you see, my God, that could have been me, so easily could have been me. One night drunk driving, and I'm in there, or whatever. Or if I had this sort of upbringing, or whatever. And I think that becomes an extremely powerful insight.
Yeah. Well, what drives you? Why are you so motivated in seeing that these students inside and out learn in the center, have these spiritual experiences built into the program? What drives you?
That's a really good question. It's I mean, you just see how much the students get out of it. I mean, it's rather extraordinary, and so you feel it's a privilege to be able to somehow facilitate this experience, which has incredible. I mean, you read these evaluations of these students, and what's the most transformative educational experience? This one. I mean, once you see that, how could you not do that? Because this is the dream classroom where people actually open up.
Right. Well, let's go back and talk about some of the seeds that led you to dream up this program.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Well, I have no idea. I know that I started out my career in a very, very elite institution, the Princeton University is where I started teaching. And even in those days, I would often think, before I go into the classroom, if anything what I have to say or present to the students has any urgency to it, it should fly in a maximum security prison. I mean, that has to be that compelling. This stuff has to be that existentially compelling. So I don't know why. I just always felt that. I mean, why bother to teach if it's not going to have some effect? And I've always been powerfully moved by poetry, by great works of literature, by fantastic, what I find moving expressions of the human experience. And so that's what sort of drove me, I guess, into doing what I'm doing. And so I guess that started it. And also as an interviewer, I interviewed this extraordinary woman named Lori Pompa, who founded the program. And that got me interested, and I thought I'd like to be trained. Over the last, I'd say, 30 years in the teaching of literature, there have been a lot of very positive things that have happened, and education has opened up in all kinds of ways. But some of the things that haven't been so good is that reading, the capacity to sort of confront a text and let it just affect you, has been somehow lost through all kinds of different things. The humanities are really in a very very not so good position now. They're not being well funded and so on. People are moving towards more practical kind of concerns. How am I going to make a living? Understandably, that sort of thing, on the one hand. But then also we've had this sort of theory or a lot of, I don't know how to put it, critical approaches which sort of predetermine how it works, whatever that is. People call it political correctness, which gets in the way of this encounter we were saying earlier, in which you just allow yourself to have the outside come in. So you don't go in there with some preconceived armor